Test 1, 2, 3. I see we are at the 4 o'clock hour, so let's go ahead and call to order the November 2nd meeting of the Historical Board of Palatka. Do we have Chaplain Mulberry with us today? Do we have anyone in the house who would like to offer a short invocation? Thank you, sir. If we could please stand.
If you would please come to the podium, sir. Turn the microphone on.
Let us pray. Lord, we gather today seeking your wisdom for us as we make decisions about this community and for the sake of the history and what this community means to so many. Lord, guide our discussion, our deliberations, guide the decisions that are made here. And we offer all these prayers in thanksgiving for who you are and that you came to save and redeem. And we give thanks for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. If we could please continue standing for the pledge to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, if we could have the roll call, please.
Thank you so much. For the record, Alan Sheffield is not present. Mr. Larry Beaton.
Present.
Mr. Chris Hollister. Mr. Timothy Jefferson.
Present.
Miss Brianna Pierce.
Present.
Miss Patty Vogt.
Present.
Mary Jane Rosa. Present. Filling in for Alan Sheffield as alternate member, and Chair Van Rensburg.
Present.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum in the chambers.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to item D of the call to order, the appeal procedure and ex parte communication. Notice, any person wishing to appeal any decision made by the Historic Preservation Board with respect to any matter considered at such meeting will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purpose may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record includes the testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. FS 286.0105. Moving on to ex parte communication. I'm not absolutely certain that this qualifies, but I did receive a text message from our neighbor in the South Historic District, Mr. Vito Russo, who asked about the application, and I simply immediately directed him to contact city staff about the matter. Ladies, gentlemen, any other ex parte communication that we wish to share at this time, please?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to state that I am a member of St. Mark's Parish, although I am in no way involved in their financial dealings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rosa. Anyone else? Let's move along to item 2 on our agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of the October 5th meeting. Ladies, gentlemen. Anything to comment? If not, let's look for a motion to approve. Thank you, Ms. Vogt. In a second.
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye. And opposed. The minutes of the October 5th meeting are approved. Moving on to public comment. I believe, of course, unrelated to the agenda, just in general public comment. Let's open that up. Would anyone like to address us at this time? If not, we'll go ahead and close that and move on to regular business, which today item A is HPB case 23-26, request to demolish a historic structure at 312 North 2nd Street. The owner is the Episcopal Church in the Diocese of Florida, Incorporated. The address is 312 North 2nd Street, Palatka, Florida. And the parcel number is 42-10-27-6850-0090-0020, an application that was tabled from our October meeting to our meeting here today in October. I believe,
So very quickly before the staff presentation, I do need to go over the fact that this is a quasi judicial hearing. So just let me know when you want me to do that.
I was hoping that you could do that now.
Okay. Sure. So this is what is known as a quasi judicial hearing, which means that you are essentially sitting in a judicial capacity. You are the judge. The code of the city of Palatka is basically the law, and you need to apply this application to the existing law. So I put up a slide just for ease of reference. And you've already done the disclosure of the ex parte communications. In quasi judicial proceedings, the applicant in this context is rezoning, but it's also for any sort of change, including for historic preservation, has the burden of proof to show that that change is supported by competent substantial evidence. And they also need to demonstrate standing. Since the applicant here is the property owner, that's a pretty easy lift for the applicant. All quasi judicial hearings require speakers who are going to submit any testimony or evidence be sworn in. They may be cross-examined, and popular sentiment and unsubstantiated evidence cannot be used for a basis in the decision. Factual testimony from lay witnesses and the opinion of expert witnesses are acceptable. You need to weigh the credibility of those witness comments. So if it's an expert in a particular field, they can't render an opinion in an area outside. At any point during the proceeding, feel free to ask me any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. West. I believe now we would move on to staff comments. Ms. Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lisa Walsh, Planning Director for the City of Palatka. As you noted, this is a request to demolish a structure at 312 North 2nd Street. There is a background in your staff report of the history of the structure as per the Florida Master Site Files. There's some photographs that were submitted by the applicant, also included in the staff report. We revised the staff report from October to include the additional information that was submitted. We added table 1 in an attempt to parse out documents that specifically referenced 312 North 2nd Street versus other documents that did not reference it or did not have a specific opinion on whether or not the building could be salvaged. On the staff recommendation is based on, I'll read the entire thing for you if you wish, verbatim. Okay. The Historic Preservation Board has considered a number of demolition requests recently. Some have been supported with structural engineer opinions, others have not. The only indication of salvageability for this parcel is given in the field observation report prepared by Nadim G. Zabuni in 2011. Many historic district codes have a provision in them regarding demolition by neglect. In the City of Palatka Code, section 54-80, proper maintenance of structures is required. It states neither the owner of nor the person in charge of a structure within a historic district shall permit such structure to fall into a state of disrepair, which may result in the deterioration of exterior appurtenances or architectural features, so as to produce or tend to produce, in the judgment of the board, a detrimental effect upon the character of the district as a whole or the life and character of the structure in question. This directive addresses the concept of demolition by neglect. The Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties are silent on the topic of demolition. However, demolition of a historic structure obviously means no component of the structure would exist, erasing its historic or architectural value and destabilizing the integrity of the district. The owner of this structure and other historic structures on the property is a nonprofit organization. As such, they are eligible to apply for various grants for technical and financial assistance through the Florida Department of State Division of Historical Resources. I won't read the the site website address, and other agencies. Further, the removal of this structure would be detrimental to the historic and architectural character of the North Historic District, a consideration in section 54-79, parentheses B, parentheses 4 of the Palatka Code of Ordinances. The applicant has indicated their intention to demolish the structure and to install a garden park. While the applicant's field observation report from 2011 noted the need for the comprehensive restoration to be completed, it also regarded the property as salvageable and noted it should be evaluated further on page 7. Therefore, staff recommends denial of a certificate of appropriateness for the HPB 23-26 312 North 2nd Street for the demolition requested. Lastly, as part of this recommendation, there is a section of code that I've quoted in here. If the demolition of this structure is approved, section 54-79 provides further guidance. In the case of the proposed demolition of an existing structure, that the removal of such structure will not be detrimental to the historic and architectural character of the district, or that balancing the interests of the city and preserving the integrity of the district and the interests of the owner of the property, approval of the plans for demolition is required by considerations of reasonable justice and equity. In the latter event, the board shall issue an order postponing demolition for a period of not to exceed 3 months. If the board concludes that the demolition should be postponed, it shall, before issuing any final order with respect to such postponement, afford the applicant an opportunity to appear before the board to offer any evidence he may desire to present concerning the proposed order. Within the period of postponement, the board shall consult with the Putnam County Historical Society Board of Directors and others to ascertain what the city or other agency or organization may do to preserve such structure, and shall make recommendations to that effect to the city commission or otherwise cause the structure to be preserved. This article shall not apply to any permit for demolition which had not been applied for in proper form prior to the effective date of the ordinance from which this article is derived. Staff will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. Ladies, gentlemen, do we have questions for Ms. Walsh at this time? No? I do have a question for you, and that would be when we're dealing with a situation where a property owner finds himself in a position where they have an unwanted historical structure, are there other alternatives to demolition?
I would say so, yes.
Could you elaborate?
They have options to retain the structure and move it within their property if they wish to, and sell it if they wish to. In order to accomplish that, they could split off a portion of their property into a separate lot and move the structure, or keep the structure where it is and split off that lot if it meets the development standards criteria, and then sell it. And lastly, they could apply for grants through the Division of Historical Resources. I spoke with Drew Bagley this morning at the Division of Historical Resources, who told me that the next grant cycle for exterior and structural grant applications opens in April. And as a nonprofit organization, they are eligible to apply for those grants.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walsh.
You're welcome.
Ladies, gentlemen, other questions that might have arisen? May we hear from the applicant, please? And if you could state your name and name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob Taylor, architect. I'm also a member of St. Mark's Parish. And hopefully the board has taken advantage of the opportunity that I gave them last time with the information that I presented. Information contained in the packet is important and has expert opinions offered by esteemed architects and engineers and a former Palatka city planner. The packet of information I presented to each of you on 5 October meeting was a direct response to comments made by Ms. Walsh that I just received that morning. Unfortunately, I was not allowed to speak. The full report on 312 North 2nd Street provided to the board shows damage caused by years of deterioration, impacts of invasive repairs, cut joists and studs, termite infestation, incorrectly extended walls, missing structural headers, and deficient construction incorporated from its very beginning in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The building at 312 North 2nd Street served as a residence for our priest until 1959, when it became a rental property and a church office. The original structure was constructed in the late 19th century and sold to the church by Helen Putnam, the widow of Judge Benjamin Putnam, with a chimney fire in 1915 that charred beams. In 1917, the church constructed a faux Georgian exterior surround for the original structure, jacked up the ceilings to raise a roof, and added a bathroom and dinette on the second floor. In 2017, Hurricane Irma struck Palatka and caused damage to roofs on 4 of the 5 St. Mark's buildings. 312 North 2nd Street roof was replaced with a metal roof, along with other roofs on the campus. Unfortunately, rain entered the building, causing not only water damage, but mold and mildew. An 8-day power outage and a lack of air conditioning humidity control exacerbated the damage. The 312 North 2nd Street building suffered water infiltration and damage. Investigation of the damage at the northeast corner disclosed wood rot, termite damage to the floor beams and joists, and damage to the existing masonry piers. The northeast corner was decimated and damage to the exterior walls was exposed. Emergency repairs had to be effected just to keep the building from falling down. Since the building is just down the street, I would invite you to go and take a look at it, but the walls are not attached to the foundation. Interior has rotten mildew. I would be concerned for your safety. Hence the video and the photographs. I would like to present a video as well today. And please also refer to your agenda packet so you can see some of the photographs, or perhaps they'll be posted on the board. Cool. There's the video, which was taken by a drone. I'm sorry, Sonny. Oh, okay, go. From the outside, the building looks to be intact. There were some holes that were patched in the exterior. They revealed that the exterior corners where the links of chains were strung to stabilize the building. This slide shows the lack of the first and second floor, and that went rather quickly, but it also shows the exterior studs on the east wall, which had to be spliced because they no longer touch the rim beam. The structure appears to be slowly tilting toward North 2nd Street. So just to reiterate, figure 5 shows missing first and second floor, the northeast corner column, and splices at the base of the stud at east. Figure 6 in your packet shows a split in the chimney foundation, an indication of differential sediment. By inspection, when I was doing my report, I saw no conventional footings or foundations, which would be helpful in promoting differential settlement. Figure 7 shows the outside corner and wood beam separated. Hold on that if you can, Sonny. What's interesting there is you can see from the photograph, the masonry pier, the bricks themselves are separating. There's no apparent evidence of any mortar shown, which means that it has eroded away. The wood beams don't actually touch. There's no connections from the pier to the main frame of the structure, which is a code requirement. But that doesn't exist anywhere on the building. It appears that when buildings were constructed at this time, the standards for construction were not nearly the same as they are today. Today, it requires continuity from the footing to the rooftop. So endeavoring to restore something of that magnitude would be a major encounter. In 2019, St. Mark's did ask representatives of Alpha Foundation, Inc. to come and take a look at the structure and get a proposal to restore the piers, the beams, deteriorated floor joists, and construct proper foundations. But this request was declined because they said it was deemed economically not feasible. Part of the city code 5479, city planner Thad Crow requested a comparison estimate. And back at that time, 2013, David Church had given us an estimate opinion that to restore this building would cost about $700,000. For purposes of illustration, to demolish and remove the building, we got a proposal of $14,000. Try it again, $1,450. 11 August 2023, St. Mark's filed a COA request for demolition. 5 October 2023, the staff report was made available, and it contained what we consider prejudicial allegations against St. Mark's without supporting facts. I had prepared those documents for presentation, but again, I was not allowed to speak. The city staff report alleges, number one, demolition by neglect. As a nonprofit church, St. Mark's is the steward of the greatest number of historic properties in Palatka. The 1853 sanctuary, founded by Judge Isaac Bronson and Elizabeth Mosley Houghton, the parish hall, the James House Cottage on 208 Main Street, and even the 1880 St. Mark's Academy for Black and White boys that was moved, restored, and attached to the parish hall. St. Mark's Building and Grounds employs a part-time carpenter handyman and utilizes a 10-member men's club volunteers for repairs and maintenance of the campus buildings. Greater than $500,000 has been expended by St. Mark's in restorative repairs since 2017. Former city planner Thad Crow and his staff report listed that St. Mark's had filed 9 certificates of application for repairs for demolition in 10 years. Item 2, lack of engineering studies. There are 3 engineering reports, 3 architectural evaluations, and the city planner evaluation. Synergy Structural Engineering was done in May of 1997. Nadeem Zabuni, Structural Internationals, February 2011. I gave you a copy of that. Patrick Rhodes, PE, NV5, Structural Analysis, July 2021. I gave you a copy of that. 3 architectural reports. Herschel Shepard, AIA, May 1981. Kenneth Smith, AIA, May 1997. And Robert Taylor, 2021. I gave you a copy of that. And the report from City Planner Thad Crow, May 2013 in City Records. Item 3, no proposed use of the property was submitted. On 30 September 2023, St. Mark's Vestry and the new rector, the Reverend John Davis, whose first day was August 1st, decided on a community meditative garden. Images and description was shared with 50 adjacent neighbors and hand-delivered newsletter on October 3rd. In my October 5th packet, I presented an artist rendering of what we propose. Staff report item number 4 proposes or promises public funding is available to restore the building. St. Mark's Church has endeavored to secure funding through a variety of grants. The city of Palatka and the Palatka North Historic District promised funding, but that never materialized. That was in 2014. And the church has applied for numerous grants. I have found records of a small matching grant in 2018, which was denied, a special category grant, which was denied in 2017 for the parish house, and a small matching grant, which was awarded in 2019 for the 312 North 2nd Street and the 208 Main Street building. And more recently, a small category or small matching grant was awarded in 2021 for the James House. Construction documents are in process to preserve and restore the James House. The Municipal Code Section 5479 requires approval by this board for significant measures. 5479B1 says such proposed alteration will not impair the historic value. The proposed use of the real property at 312 North 2nd Street is a community park and prayer labyrinth with century-old oak tree, mature azaleas, and green space surrounded by historic structures of the St. Mark's Church, open to all. In fact, I believe in the Matthew Brady's photo in the 1870s, there's a little sapling in the photo, which may be this centuries-old live oak still there. The municipal code also cites references to 5479A, which says consideration of immediate surroundings and to the district. 5479B, 1 and 2, impairment value of immediate surroundings. 5479B3, the new garden will not impair the visual character of the district. The Florida Building Code defines dangerous as any building structure or portion thereof that meets the conditions described below shall be deemed dangerous. The building or structure has collapsed or partially collapsed, has moved off of its foundation, or lacks the necessary support of the ground. There exists a significant risk of collapse, detachment, or dislodgement of any portion, member, appurtenance, or ornamentation of a building or structure under service loads. I remind you, this building hasn't been used for 20 years. Let me quote from the Zabuni report on February the 11th. The south wall is not attached to interior support. The second floor addition area shows signs of rotting, and much of the wall framing along the west side was poorly constructed and needs to be replaced. The porch at the front of the building and the main entry was inadequately tied to the existing structure and is unsafe for use. The foundation beam and isolated pad and pier foundations along the 40 feet west side of the building near the existing porch was repaired inadequately in need of replacement. The porch in this area was rotted in generally poor condition. The siding of the building was rotted in some areas. Ms. Walsh cited Palatka Municipal Code 5479B4, and it requires a balance of reasonable justice in equity. I'll quote, in the case of a proposed demolition of an existing structure, that the removal of such structure will not be detrimental to the historical and architectural character to the district, or that balancing the interest of the city in preserving the integrity of the district and the interest of the owner of the property, approval of the plans for demolition is required by considerations of reasonable justice and equity in the ordinance. City Planner Thad Crow said, you have to consider the owner's plight. 213 document, page 6. By its diligence and stewardship of its historic building through maintenance, professional evaluations, provision of a community park open to all, and a better application of fiscal resources, St. Mark's has met that municipal code requirement of reasonable justice in equity. In conclusion, as cited by Ms. Walsh, Zabuni stated that the buildings may be salvageable, but the remainder of that opinion was the cost of needed repairs become costly and should be evaluated further. And on the next page, he said in writing, with the exception of the rectory buildings, the buildings on St. Mark's property are generally good condition for their age and are in salvageable condition, with exception of the rectory building. Undoubtedly, none of the structures would meet the current building code requirements for hurricane loading. St. Mark's Episcopal Church is a modest congregation of only about 35 families and has the expenses of 5 buildings. $700,000 to $1 million for St. Mark's Church to restore 312 2nd Street is an undue economic hardship, and cited by City Planner Thad Crow's report, 214, page 7, as cited by Thad Crow. St. Mark's Church is focusing its resources on transformation of the deteriorated structure to a garden park and refurbishing the James House Cottage at 208 Main Street with a $50,000 grant award from the State Division of Historic Resources. We believe that a property owner should be able to choose how one can use its resources and demolish one of its buildings if it's dangerous. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Do we have questions among our board? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to open public comment, but before I do have a question of our city attorney, please, if you would, Ms. West. We have a number of comments, and I believe there is a time limitation that goes along with the comments, and I believe we'll probably be timing. If it appears that everyone that is coming up to speak is speaking on one side of the issue and we don't necessarily have an opposing view, are we asked to still hear everyone's opinion or to decide that there is a consensus in the room?
No, I mean, you need to hear everyone who signs up for public comment has the right to speak. You can implore on the members, is this on? To please be mindful of the time. And if their comments are simply duplicative in nature, they may voluntarily choose to not speak, but everyone has the right to speak.
I appreciate you weighing in on that, and that is exactly what I would ask. Let's go ahead and open up to public comment. If you would, please, when you approach us, let us know your name and your address for the record. Let's begin, and I did not get these in a particular order, so therefore I'm not going to read them in a particular order. A gentleman by the name of Mr. Donald and Kersey? Kears. Mr. Kears.
Madam Chair and Board, thank you for hearing us today. I came to St. Mark's when I was a child in
I'm sorry, sir,
Palatka.
if you wouldn't mind your address for us, please.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Name Donald Kearse, 200 Madison Street. I live directly across from the structure that they want to demolish. And as I said, as a youngster, I went into St. Mark's, and I've been familiar with St. Mark's for 80 years now. And when I decided to retire to my permanent home, I chose 200 Madison Street, which is directly across the street from this structure. I don't have a problem with the structure being demolished. I do have a problem with that turning into a public area. As probably the church can tell from their videos, at night you have some characters walking around the church as it is now. If we open that up into a park, I'm afraid we will draw more into that area. And again, I do not want to see that park open area to public done. Any questions?
Thank you very much, sir. Any questions, ladies, gentlemen? No? Thank you very much, sir.
Chair, if I may comment?
Yes, ma'am.
If the microphone crackles, it's because the person is speaking too close to the microphone, causing the crackling. So if we could ask people to please step back just a step.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Ms. Denise Robinson, please. And again, if you would, your address for the record, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Denise Robinson. I live at 23685 Northeast Highway 314 in Salt Springs, Florida. I am not a resident of Putnam County, but I am the most recent junior warden of St. Mark's Episcopal Church and have been for almost the last 2 years, following my husband who shepherded the recovery project after the damage from Irma. My concern about not taking that building down is one of complete safety. If you had enough interest and had seen the inside of that building, as we tried to refurbish what we could of that building, as after we finished the church and we finished the parish hall, you would see that there was nothing to nail anything new to. The pictures speak for themselves. When you see the flooring that is missing, that was because the floor was so soggy that they were picking up the wood to see what was under and whether or not anything could be replaced or refurbished. We've been with St. Mark's about 7 years. We've been through 2 priests, Father Bob, who I'm sure you've met on previous occasions, and I've spoken with Father Jim Dorn, who was the last person to apply for demolition more than a decade ago. It concerns me that if you've never personally seen the building, you've just looked at pictures, if you have no engineers on your committee, if you have no engineers on your staff, and I hope Ms. Walsh will address the makeup of her staff that came with the reports, you will see in Mr. Taylor's report that we have knocked ourselves out making application for grants, having people come and assess that building, having volunteer workers spend hours trying to hold it together long enough to see if we could actually do something with it. The time has passed for continuing denying the fact that some things just come to an end. And I'll finish with this. There is a family by the name of Finney that's been attending St. Mark's Church for about 100 years. Mrs. Finney's 103 years old. Her son, Norman, with his dad, Jim, basically were the maintenance crew of St. Mark's for decades. I phoned Norman yesterday because he's very busy now taking care of his 103-year-old mother. And I asked Norman again about the building in terms of its historical value. And Norman said to me, that building is such that the only historical value in that building are the fireplaces, and they are not usable. And in fact, probably contributed to the fire in the 19-teens. Mr. Finney said the roof line has changed.
We're going to go ahead and wrap up.
All right.
Thank you.
But basically, it has no historical value anymore except for the chimneys. I'd like to restate that.
Thank you very much. Ladies, gentlemen, did we have questions for Ms. Robinson? We're going to go ahead and move along. Dr. Diane Taylor.
Thank you. I'm reading a letter from.
And I'm so sorry.
Oh,
Your
that's right.
address for the
Sorry,
record. if you would.
Diane Taylor, Dianne Taylor, 261 West River Road, Palatka. And I'm reading a letter from Phil Leary, who had a conflict this evening. Phil Leary is a government affairs land use planning real estate realtor. Dear board members, as a former Palatka City Commissioner, nationally certified land use planner, and a lifelong member of St. Mark's Episcopal Church, I am respectfully requesting the HPB grant the application for demolition of the church's former rectory building. I have personally inspected the building and concur with the opinion that it is and has been termite infested with significant structural damage and is not feasibly or financially salvageable. My family dates to the Civil War in Putnam County. My mother is 96 and is the oldest living member of St. Mark's. I support and understand the importance of historical and architecturally significant buildings and grounds, as my family owns one of the oldest houses, 113 years old, in the South Historic District, and we have continually supported historic preservation. However, in its current condition, the building presents a serious fire hazard that threatens the church, parish hall, and the public safety for the neighborhood. With a very small congregation, we have a tremendous financial burden maintaining and paying property and casualty insurance for the church, the parish hall and classrooms, and 312 North 2nd Street on our campus, all of which require constant maintenance and financial investment, which is impossible for a small and aging congregation. In conclusion, I would like to make the board aware that Florida is a state that provides relief to private landowners when a law, regulation, or ordinance inordinately burdens, restricts, or limits private property without amounting to a taking under the U.S. Constitution. The state of Florida enacted the Burt J. Harris Jr. Private Property Rights Protection Act in 1995, which provides a specific process for landowners to seek relief when their property is unfairly affected by government action. Under the act, a claim exists if a governmental entity inordinately burdens an existing use of real property. To deny the application, in my professional opinion, would constitute placing an inordinate burden on the church. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you have any questions or need additional information. Sincerely, Phil Leary. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Briefly, board, I need to address the legal opinion stated by this planner in this letter regarding the Burt-Harris Act that was enacted in 1995. The Burt-Harris Act has no retroactive applicability. The historic district was established in 1983. It is not subject to Burt-Harris.
Thank you very much, Ms. West. Board members, did we have questions of Ms. West regarding this, or indeed of the, okay. In that case, moving along, the Reverend John Davis, PhD. And I know I don't have to remind you your address, please, sir. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, my address is 139 Walton Road, East Palatka. And as you introduced me, the Reverend John Davis, PhD, and I bring that PhD up for a moment simply because the first 2 years of my research was on church architecture. So I've studied this topic to some great extent. My issue here is, as we sort of think about this, and I'm new to Palatka, I will say that, but I love history and I love historic buildings. As part of a lot of my life has been spent in historic buildings throughout the world in so many ways. But what I would say is that I don't know if your churches or where you might be, this is a season of what we call stewardship in the life of the church, where we're sort of raising the money and doing those kinds of things, thinking forward to our next year. And so this really, to me, is a matter of stewardship. And what I mean by that is stewardship in its larger sort of understanding is the management of our time, our talent, our treasures. Sometimes that phrase is thrown out that way, but basically it's taking our time, our energy, what we have, our talents that we bring to things, whether that be being an architect or a builder or whatever it might be in terms of that. And our treasures. And there are a lot of treasures on this property, as I've discovered in my few short months of being the rector at St. Mark's. And I am grateful for, as I've watched how this congregation has stewarded this property. It's a really testimony that they do love this community. I think back to the stories that I've heard after Irma took out a good portion of our buildings, and that went to great extent to restore those. But this one, I feel, is there are some times when you come to an issue of stewardship, there are some times where you need to let go. And I would just commend the board to consider this application for demolition as a time for letting go of something that is really not safe and is something that could be used for better purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Did we have questions? Okay. Let's move to Ms. Cheryl Dollar, please.
My name is Cheryl Newton Dollar. I live at 2406 South Palm Avenue. And bear with me, I can't see a clock. I'm going to do the best I can here. I am a supporter of preserving history. That can take many forms, including the written word, oral history, and buildings. I have seen many buildings in Palatka torn down. Glendale Hospital, where I was born, Mary Lawson Hospital, the Mellon School, where my father and I went to school, the Howell Theater, the house I grew up in. I still have my memories, and asked my children and grandchildren can tell you that I love to talk about them. My family has lived in Palatka since the early 1900s. My father was born in an apartment on Lemon Street. He and his sister were baptized in St. Mark's in 1910. My husband and I were married at St. Mark's. My children and grandchildren were baptized at St. Mark's. If you include the time my father served as junior warden and my son and I served as senior warden, it would be several decades of involvement with St. Mark's. I was baptized in St. Augustine in 46, but then came right back over. I could take up your time and relate many memories I personally have with the building in question. I would also love to include Juann Hall, those of you that remember it. It was located on Madison Street, beautiful, wonderful building that's now gone. It is important to point out that St. Mark's takes care of its buildings. The church, parish house, and rectory have been renovated and repaired more times than I can count. It was done not just with money, but volunteer labor. The latest damage from the hurricane was substantial, but has already been talked about. I'm amazed at the work that's been done with the church building and the parish house. A building which is compromised is dangerous. Buildings are not people. I ask you not to allow your power to overcome your responsibility to do what is right. Thank you. Any questions?
Ladies, gentlemen, questions of Ms. Dollar? Thank you very much. Mr. Stewart Robinson, please. And again, your address for the record, sir.
Okay. Stuart Robinson, 23685 Northeast Highway 314, Salt Springs, Florida. And we're a member of St. Mark's. I'm actually here presenting myself for questions. I was the project manager on restoring or actually repairing the church and the grounds to include roofs on all the buildings to prevent any further damage from water intrusion, which would be demolition by neglect. And I have used that phrase trying to get FEMA to recognize that the roofs we installed were a little more expensive than the insurance offered as far as asphalt shingles. I don't believe in asphalt shingles, and neither did the folks that work with me. So we went beyond, and we are applying at this time and still applying, but we're headed for arbitration with FEMA to try to recover some of the funding that went beyond the insurance coverage. So just to kind of give you a feel for it, that's the reason you have roofs on all of our buildings that were damaged, 4 buildings. Any questions? You're welcome.
Miss Martha Preston, please.
My name is Martha Preston. I live at 3221 Blair Drive, in Palatka, Florida. I am a cradle member of St. Mark's Episcopal Church, and I am just astounded that we have been able to do what we have been able to do in repairing and restoring St. Mark's. I have fond memories of the rectory because Pipes Jones was living in the rectory when I was a child. But sometimes we have to think about what is safe for the community. And I do not feel like that building is safe for the community. And I worry about children that coming around there playing and stuff. And to me, it means a lot to us to be able to restore it, but it's almost impossible to in the state that it's in now. Thank you.
I'm sorry, my microphone wasn't on. I asked if there were questions and I didn't see any. And then I said, Miss Allegra Kitchens, please. Sorry.
Allegra Kitchens, 1027 South 12th Street, Palatka, Florida. I'm not a member of St. Mark's, but I've seen it all of my life. And my mother and her family stayed there at the rectory when they came here around 1915. The pastor rented out the upstairs to them. I just want to point out a couple of things. I don't have the Florida statute number. I have it at home. I wasn't prepared to speak on it today or on this at all. But the Florida statutes actually exempt historic buildings from the current building code, Florida building code. They're under a different building code. So referencing that this would be so expensive under the current code, it would be, but Florida statutes does exempt historic buildings, and this one is in the historic district. As for the garden park, there is a garden park at St. James Independent Methodist Church a couple of blocks away. But for them to put a garden park here, they are going to have to get the historical board's approval to find out if it is historically accurate to put a garden park, or especially a public garden park. The other thing is that if you remove a historic building from a historic district, it is detrimental, because the historic districts are based on the number of historic buildings in the district. And when you reduce the number of buildings, then it does cause a problem for the historic district. And I would point out that the Sanchez house I think it's on North 4th Street. It's anyway, the Sanchez house is across from Miss Vote's property. The Sanchez house was brought here for demolition in almost as bad condition as this place was, and it was denied because it is historical and there are grants available. When I heard Mr. Taylor speaking of the grants they applied for, I did not hear him that he had applied for the grant that Ms. Walsh talked about from, I think it was the Florida State Division of Historic Places. And the next grant cycle is April of 2024. So that would certainly be a very good possibility that St. Mark's could apply for that grant and get a grant to fix up the house. And I just wanted to point those things out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kitchens. Did we have questions of Ms. Kitchens? Okay. Seeing no other speaker cards, we will go ahead and close the public portion.
The applicant does have the opportunity to provide a brief closing statement.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Florida Building Code does have an existing building provision under the existing building code. The historic preservation requirements are particularly sensitive to energy conservation, and that's about it. I had a meeting with John Chaffee, who's the former chief building official, the fire marshal, and Ms. Walsh was there. And we talked about what forgiveness, if any, was allowed when we were proposing to restore and renovate the James House in 312 North 2nd Street. And that report is in your document that you got relative to the 312 North 2nd Street. Look at it, and you'll see that there's no forgiveness as far as structural is concerned, which means, as I mentioned before, the connection from the foundation to the roof applies. There's no forgiveness reference to wind loads or hurricane provision. As a matter of fact, when you restore a building to over 50% of its value, level 3 alterations kick in and say you got to make it meet current codes, even if it's historic. Okay. Secondly, Mr. Robinson indicated that we've replaced 4 of the 5 roofs on St. Mark's at a significant expense, and we're still wrestling with FEMA to get reimbursed for money that cost above and beyond what the insurance paid. It's important to note that the office and classroom complex now needs a roof. We have a proposal for $50,000. It would be important to allocate the funds to a facility that is usable rather than one that might look like a postcard. There are no intended purposes for 312 North 2nd Street. It's currently being used for storage. That's about it. The James House, however, would be a community outreach building for the community and afford the church another opportunity to meet and greet people in the local neighborhood and provide spiritual counseling and services and a community meeting place. Question?
Ladies, gentlemen, question of Mr. Taylor's.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me a moment. I apologize. My actual question was to our board members. Don't mean to pick on you, my friend, but we have to do things by the book, especially today. Speaking of doing things by the book, Ms. West, what is next?
Okay, so now it goes back to the board for deliberation. And you've already been made aware by Ms. Walsh what the standard is. And I already explained the standard under a quasi judicial hearing. The applicant must demonstrate competent and substantial evidence for you to approve.
Ladies, gentlemen, who would like to begin? Ms. Rosa.
Thank you. I'd like to talk about the architecture of the building, which no one really has addressed. Sometime, I believe 1915, 1917, someone who was living in the house decided to do some major architectural damage to the facade of the building. The building has none of its original character, which would make it an important building in the district. When I first saw the building, I've been here about a year, when I first meandered around in the neighborhood and looked at the building, it looked to me like a bad center entrance colonial that I would have seen in New England. The Greek portico that they added to the outside is not in scale with the rest of the building, and the windows are too small. If you look at it, not as a picture, but as a part of the community, it doesn't contribute architecturally to the committee, to the community. We were talking briefly about a house that was asked to be removed, and I believe it was the house that was on Laurel and Fourth, which if you look at that, it's in very bad condition, but the original architecture is still there. So in asking the church to save this, what are we asking them to save? This is not a beautiful edifice. It's not historically correct. It's actually bastardized in its design. So since I am a student of architecture and have been for quite some time, I'd like to bring that up so that the committee knows that that's what we got. I understand, and I'm a firm believer that we should try to save important buildings. This is not architecturally important. I think we should look at it and make a decision based on how important it is within the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rosa. Other thoughts from our board? Mr. Hollister.
Yes. Your first application was 10 years ago to tear this house down? Yeah. Okay. Is there any way that if we grant permission to tear it down, that you can bring somebody in and possibly save?
Ms. West?
Yeah, so we actually closed the examination period. That was the opportunity for questions. Well, you know, in the interest, since I realize this is probably a new process for you, I'll add a little leeway. But if you could keep it brief.
Ms. West, I would truly rather do it by the book because this is a new experience for us. So if that's okay, Mr. Hollister, let's talk amongst ourselves.
I'm going to defer to the chair on how she wants to run this meeting, but the opportunity to question the witnesses and the applicant has closed. The procedure is now that it's back to board deliberation for you to deliberate amongst yourselves.
Madam Chair, I'm being asked if Mr. Hollister's mic is on.
Okay, and as your chairman for the historical board, I am going to defer to our city attorney, Ms. West, and I'm going to say that the portion where we were able to ask questions of speakers and that sort of thing has indeed passed, and now we are deliberating amongst ourselves. Other comments, questions amongst ourselves? Okay. If we don't have more board discussion, I have a few things that I would like to point out. I've been with this board for a long time. I've never seen a agenda of this nature, and it did take a lot of time to go through and be able to find my way through. I appreciate the column toward the front, which related to what was specific to the property in question and what was not as specific to it, but I still made a point to read the entire thing in its entirety 2 or 3 times. I have not been in Palatka that long, but I have been in Palatka many years more than a good deal of the folks that are moving here now. I've been here about 20 years, and I love my town, and I do love my neighborhood very, very much. No, this property has not been occupied to any fashion at all since at least I moved to the area. And I did notice a portion of the package where it said that it's really kind of a testament to the strength of the house that, you know, it managed to hold up despite a lot of stuff happening to it. I do know from looking at the paperwork and also things that I've looked at in the past that indeed there were more properties that were part of the campus for St. Mark's. It refers to page 52 of the which focuses on the 1917 Sanborn map, which page 52 will show you that indeed 4 properties on the St. Mark's campus are already gone. This, in my estimation, would be just another gone property. And that is a preservationist at heart. Hurts my heart. It is not the time to question, but I would like to point out that there was a time, and it is referenced in the packet. And by the way, Ms. West, if I'm getting myself in trouble sharing my opinion, let me know. This is very, very new to us. There was a time when the James house itself was it was requested to demolish, and at the time the North Historic Neighborhood Association did step in, and between the Episcopal Church local members and the North Historic Neighborhood Association, with meetings with the city of Palatka about the concept of using CRA funds, a package was put together where we take the St. James house, which at the time, like I said, the idea was to demolish it and move it actually to the corner of Main and 3rd Street, which is also a part of the Episcopal Church campus. That property to revert to the neighborhood association along with the house being placed on it, and then the neighborhood association would use CRA funds to fix it up. The idea being sell it, replenish the CRA funds, and get it back on the tax rolls. And yes, it did hit a snag, but it didn't hit a snag to my recollection within the neighborhood or the city. It hit more of a snag with the church itself saying not so much. So I agree, things have been done. I wish there were more things that could be done. And I believe that's the extent of my personal comments. If anyone has anything else to add, I suggest this would be a good time. Otherwise, we might want to look toward a motion. Mr. Beaton.
Madam Chair, it's none of these cases are easy to decide because I know most everybody who got up and spoke today on a personal basis, and I have a lot of respect for them and their opinions. I also have a deep respect for the history of this community and trying to preserve it. Prior to my appointment to this board and the establishment of the historic districts and this board, the city of Palatka, in a period of 10 years, tore down 50 100-year-old or older buildings in the city, inside the city of Palatka. So I always keep that in mind because I replaced Clinton Snyder on this board, who most of you know was a very well-respected historian in this community. The challenge for either a private owner or a nonprofit to maintain historic buildings in today's economy is tremendous. And I feel like that St. Mark's Episcopal has been an important part of this community for a long time. On the other hand, I have to look at the history of this structure, and my opinion, based on being involved with these cases for many, many years. And based on that, I have to support the recommendation of city staff to deny this certificate of appropriateness.
Appreciate your comments, Mr. Beaton. Other board members? Again, I would direct that we move towards some type of a conclusion in the form of a motion. Mr. Beaton.
Madam Chair, I move that the board accepts staff's recommendation to deny the certificate of appropriateness for HPB 23-26, 312 North 2nd Street.
Thank you, Mr. Beaton. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion made by Mr. Beaton, seconded by Ms. Vogt to accept staff's recommendation that we deny this application. Is there discussion amongst the board? Maybe call the roll, please, Madam
Yes,
City Clerk.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Mr. Larry Beaton,
Aye.
Mr. Chris Hollister,
Nay.
Hollister, nay. Mr. Tim Jefferson,
Aye.
Miss Brianna Pierce,
Aye.
Miss Patty Boat,
Aye.
Miss Rosa.
Nay.
Rosa, nay. Chair Van Rensburg.
Aye. Madam City Clerk,
The motion passes 5-2.
thank you very much. Ms. West?
Well done, board, for following the procedures. Very briefly, if any person aggrieved by the decision of the board today, they may file an appeal pursuant to section 54-74 within 15 days. That appeal would go to the city commission. And thereafter, you could potentially appeal any further decisions to the circuit court in a petition for writ of certiorari.
Thank you, Ms. West. Additional staff comments? Additional board comments? A motion to adjourn.
Meeting last month regarding the fencing at Little Sprouts has been appealed by Mr. Timothy Green. That appeal will be heard at the city commission meeting this Thursday, November 9th.
Thank you, Ms.
I
West.
also have a comment.
Yes, Ms. Krantz.
I think this is good news. Mr. Tim Jefferson has applied to be reappointed to this board. That will be heard by the city commission also at the November 9th meeting.
Thank you very much, Ms. Krantz, and thank you for your service. A motion to adjourn, ladies and gentlemen.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Hollister. We are adjourned.